From bricks to bridges, how my greatest failure taught me why facts fail and why philosophy and psychology matter more. Welcome to An Overthinker's Almanac. If you've been following my sustainability series, you might be asking, what does philosophy and psychology have to do with recycling, plastics, or climate? The short answer is everything. As we saw in my plastic sustainability series, the solution isn't just analyzing data and conducting life cycle analyses. Achieving real circularity relies on people and their behaviors. And I'll make a big assumption here. If you've met people, you realize that facts aren't universally influential. We defend our beliefs like a fortress, build our identities into the walls, and often treat new information as a threat rather than a gift. This series is my attempt to unpack that reality. We begin with a story of what I consider the biggest failure in my life, and how being a scientist put me at a disadvantage in influencing and helping others. This episode kicks off a 5-part series on what I learned from this experience and what it taught me about the deeper tools we actually need to make an impact in this crazy world run by humans: psychology, philosophy, and humility. Hopefully this series explains how I pivot from ranting about sustainability to discussing philosophy and psychology, and why it's all connected to enabling me and hopefully you to make a positive impact on the world. Over the next month, with weekly new episodes on Tuesdays, I'll share how I came to understand why facts fail, what real teaching requires, and how ancient wisdom and modern behavioral science offer better ways to connect, influence, and hopefully bridge divides. Because if we want to make real progress on challenges like sustainability, we can't just throw more data bricks at people. We need to start building bridges. Part 1. Chessboards at a gunfight. Bringing a chessboard to a gunfight. That's how it feels to reason with people who don't want to hear your facts. It's taken me far too long to realize this. As a scientist, I was trained to believe that truth is what wins. Data stacked on data, methodically arranged until the conclusion practically presents itself. There's a perceived obviousness. How wouldn't you come to the same outcome? Look, I brought the receipts. The approach goes something like this: data, 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 more data, summary of data, and conclusion. It's tidy, logical, and persuasive in theory. It's how scientists talk to one another, and in that closed system, it works just fine. Assuming you already share the same foundation of facts and an openness to learning. But when you take that formula outside the lab, the translation gets messy and less effective. Instead of hearing a rational argument, here's what most people actually experience. And my wife will agree with this talking to me and my friends. Data. Okay, nerd. Data. How do I get out of this conversation? More data? Maybe I can fake a medical emergency. Summary of data. How is he still talking? Conclusion. This is my moment to escape. The scientist approach collapses because the rules change. Among experts, you're building on a shared base of knowledge in a format that everyone expects. More data equals stronger case. But with a general audience, we've lost that shared baseline, and worse, they might not even care. Which my wife also agrees with. The truth I learned, painfully, slowly, stubbornly, is that any meaningful conversation starts not with facts, but with the audience. Scientists must get away from the golden rule approach. Sure, in an environment of shared backgrounds and interest with fellow engaged nerds, convincing others how you would want to be convinced works pretty well. But at a family Thanksgiving dinner, it's literally the recipe for disaster, especially when the conversation turns to COVID, masks, or vaccines. This story starts back in 2020, as I showed up, chessboard in hand, wandering into a pending gunfight. I learned the hard way that the logic tools of science aren't exactly equipped for dealing with rapidly spreading misinformation, and it was one of the greatest failures of my life. My biggest failure. March 2020. The world was shutting down, and we were all scrambling to establish our pandemic routines. Fear, uncertainty, and hand sanitizer shortages everywhere. Overnight, it became a world without toilet paper. In the middle of that chaos, I felt something that I hadn't in a long time: clarity and purpose. This was my moment, my chance to step up, cut through the noise, and offer something useful. I had what I thought was a Liam Neeson grade unique set of skills. A scientist by training, an educator by practice, and, at least in my own mind, a neutral, credible voice with no agenda beyond helping people. I'd even spent several years leading Clorox's microbiology team, the folks that literally test whether your disinfectant kills 99.9% of germs. If there was ever a time that those skills matter, it was now. So I started writing. It didn't begin with grand think pieces like this. It just became part of my new routine to make daily attempts to interpret the data, explain what was happening, and translate the scientific jargon into actual human speak. My imagined audience was clear: my own family. While a diverse group, at least politically, my real target was those loved ones who, as I started to engage on Facebook, were increasingly sharing conspiracy theories and misinformation. Every morning, I sat at the keyboard, picturing them across the table, trying to have a calm, clear, data-driven conversation that might help them see what I thought was the obvious truth. Fighting the wrong battle. At first, it felt like I was making a dent. A handful of people thanked me for clarifying things or standing up against the chaos. Messages of gratitude came from all directions: family, friends, past coworkers, and even a couple complete strangers. I felt seen and validated. For a moment, it seemed like I was making a difference with the clear information in the right tone at the right time. But my real audience, the ones I cared about most, remained unmoved. Not just unmoved, but further entrenched. The misinformation machine was picking up speed and absurdity. The cycle became maddeningly familiar. I'd see a post, fact-check it, do what a good scientist is trained to do, trace it back to the source literature, then carefully explain what the data actually said. They'd double down, share more conspiracy content, and escalate the absurdity. Every day felt like a never-ending family reunion debate where no one listens, everyone talks past each other, and you begin assessing the lethal range of a thrown casserole. Yet, I kept trying. I was helping someone. Maybe if I kept going, eventually it would click. More data is better. My intent would be clear. I'd be seen as the voice of reason again. I was science with compassion, a bridge back to my family, though it became increasingly challenging to remain positive. You know the scene in Rocky IV where Rocky's preparing to leave for Russia and Adrian confronts him? She yells at him, "Why can't you change your thinking? You can't win." That became my inner monologue as I realized the insurmountable, immovable force of deeply seated misinformation. I saw the hypocrisy. I was emotionally distraught by the potential impact of the misinformation continually spouted by my close relatives. Like Rocky, I saw myself as a fighter, and I couldn't live with myself if I didn't at least try. I mean, there's no easy way back, no shortcut home. Then my worst fear was realized. One of my cousins succumbed to COVID. Even in those raw, grieving days, some of my relatives remained locked in their perception of reality while I was trying to show them the facts. To me, this was incomprehensible. How could they not see the harmful truth staring them in the face? We'd just endured the pain felt by millions of others that I'd been warning against. This cycle dragged on for months. Post after post, refutation after refutation. Then, after I attempted to correct a particularly harmful post, likely something about masks and government control, my relative shot back the line that absolutely broke me. "I know I'm right because I'm being fact-checked." Those words still ring in my head. It was the moment that I realized we weren't even having the same conversation. Not only were we not sitting across the table from each other, we no longer resided in the same universe. Facts weren't just ineffective, they were counterproductive. I was tossing bricks of data at a fortress built on identity, tribe, and distrust. Every fact I offered only reinforced their beliefs. The same kid who once played cards with them on Sundays, went to Pirates games, and joined them in golf outings was the opposition. I was the face of the enemy. I was devastated. My mission to step up, leverage my talents to educate, was a failure. Game over. How do you respond to that comment? I became proof of their correctness. Clearly, more data was a dead end. Logic was out the window, and science had nothing to offer. Desperate, I pivoted to a different book as a bridge, looking to the Bible, hunting for a verse that might speak their language. I can't recall exactly what I shared, only that it touched on hubris and false confidence. I posted the verse location, and that was it. My last comment. I was done. This wasn't a war I was equipped to fight. I'd poured my heart into reaching the one audience that I most wanted to help, and I failed. Despite decades of expertise, I became their validation that the enemy was real. The walls were up, and I wasn't getting through. Stepping away. That was the day I gave up social media. I still lurk now and then, but my active engagement ended there. The weight of trying to fight misinformation in that arena became corrosive, degrading my mental health. It ate my energy, my confidence, and even my sense of purpose. I had wanted to help, to protect, to guide. Instead, I became the very thing my family was convinced existed, proof that their worldview was under attack. Despite decades of shared memories and my years of scientific expertise, I was no longer a trusted voice. I was Exhibit A in their case against the system. That realization cut deep. My lifetime of learning how to translate and communicate technology wasn't effective when I needed it most. If logic and science couldn't reach even the people that I loved most, what good was it? What else was left? And that's what set me searching in a new direction, away from the safety of data and towards the messier, more human questions. I realized that teaching and influence in the real world isn't a game of knowledge transfer. Facts fail because discussions aren't about sharing information. These debates are about identity. The hammer of logic wasn't driving the nail, so I needed a whole new toolbox. It was time to understand what education in the wild really means, which involves digging into psychology and philosophy. And this is where part 2 of the story begins. That's a wrap for episode 1 of From Bricks to Bridges. This was the first of a 5-part series, with new episodes dropping every Tuesday. Each one builds on the last, pun fully intended, so I'd love for you to stick with me as I keep overthinking my way across the messy interactions of science, philosophy, and psychology. Thanks for listening. Seriously, it means a lot that you're willing to spend a bit of your time with me as I sort through these lessons out loud. I hope you'll join me next week as we move from classrooms to fortresses and from facts to identity. Until then, keep questioning, keep building, and maybe don't bring a chessboard to a gunfight. Cheers.